Hello and welcome to LXV LAW-72 assembly guide. Please follow the PDF file provided for instructions alongside this video. So let's begin with trigger assembly. So the parts that you will need. I think that's pretty much it. So we're gonna start with assembling the wheel. So what you will need to do is countersink the holes for the bolts on the thicker part, and then pre-drill the holes to 2mm drill bit. You don't need to tap this or pre-drill the thinner piece, as the bolts go into them quite well. What you might do is countersink them a little bit. What I do is I use a knife and I line it into the hole and kind of twist it a few times. Then assemble it, check if it fits, check if the arms are moving freely. Also install the spring. The specification for the spring is in the PDF file. Then what I do is disassemble it again and use some glue on the contact surfaces, reassemble it, and it's pretty much done. Make sure that the spring is in this area. Basically, it's a bit wider so the spring can freely move. Also pre-drill the middle hole to using a 4mm drill bit. Then you can check the fitment within the trigger box itself. So you place the shorter arm into the trigger body, lift this arm over. It might be that the wheel is not moving smoothly, so what you might want to do is take it out and just take it to some sandpaper and or a file and just file it down a little bit. It has to move freely to allow for basically best results. So on the trigger body itself, countersink the hole for the 4mm screw, and on the other side add the 2mm bolt there and a nut for the main bolt. Right, to assemble it as before, place this as so, lift the longer arm in, line the hole, screw it in. Right, fully tighten it, and then it's gonna lock it up. So just back it up a little bit. Still sticking a little bit, just a bit more, maybe a bit more. Still can go a bit more. Oh yeah, should do it. Right, the bolt is spinning, so you don't want the bolt to spin. That should do it. Then you can use some super glue. Just drop a little blob onto the top of the nut. Then screw in the M2 bolt. Doesn't have to be threaded, we're gonna add a nut. Then take some tweezers, find the spring, and move the spring onto the bolt. Now you can basically check if it returns. It does. Then I use various washers. So start with a bigger one, also with tweezers. And then a small washer. Oh, that happens a lot. It's a little finicky. There we go. Then take an M2 bolt, nuts actually. So an M2 nut. And that's on. Screw that in. Right, it is touching the washer now. Take some longer pliers, grab the nut. Nope. Tighten it. Test again. All good. You don't need to pre-drill these. So take this angled piece. Pre-drill the holes on the angled piece. Insert the nut, the bolts. Tighten it. Right, test again, all good. Trigger box is done. Next piece is gonna be the safety mechanism, and the way it works is you have a spring. Basically, when it's in the open position, it's like this. When safety is engaged, the little round bit pushes through the body and it stops from the trigger itself from going down. So to prepare this part, I file it. Then what you want to do is drill a 1.5 millimeter hole or a 2 millimeter hole, countersink it, and insert a M2 bolt into it, then just use a bunch of glue to secure it inside if it's M2. If you drill using 1.5 mil drill bit, then it should go in and make its own thread. Just kind of make it flush, because the way it was printed, it was a bit rough, so I used some super glue and then just sanded it down using a file. Make sure it fits into the trigger body easy and it falls out by itself. Then use a specified spring, which is 9 mil wide, and it is around 15 mil long. But what matters with the spring is that it goes in fully into the provided countersunk area. So yeah, then this is done. Set it aside and we'll go on to the next step. So the next step is back tube assembly. So start with the ring. Then you have the end stop and the back tube. To prepare the parts, what I usually do is you drill M2 holes into this, then using the knife countersink these holes like I showed on the trigger body, just kind of like this, and then secure in place. I'm just gonna do it quickly in this instance. Once you secure all of the bolts, I take file and then just run the file along the outside surfaces. This is gonna make contact with the end stop, so you want it as smooth as possible for the best operation. Also the inside areas, first with file and then with sanding paper. And then if you really want to make it glide, I use kind of these wire brushes. So then you take out all of the bolts, not just two that I've done. Apply the same to the end stop, so all the contact areas inside filed or sanded, basically make them smooth, and then insert the end stop onto the back tube. It only goes one way, so it's quite smooth. And then do all of the bolts up. So when inserting, make sure that the protruding bits are going this way, as I've shown here. Right, do up all the bolts. The next step is take a file. File. And where the big gap is, file like a corner, just smooth it out, because what's gonna happen inside of the tube is this is gonna go past it. So in order to catch it well, you want to kind of round these bits a little bit and check if it's moving freely. Then the next step is gonna be the side cover. So insert 2 aluminum rods. Let me just measure them out for you. So the smaller one is protruding around 280 mil, which is on the left side, and the longer one protrudes out around 465, 463. What you want to do is sink the aluminum rods, the 6mm aluminum rods, as far as they go, and then leave 4630 and 2830. Then you round the aluminum rods, because they're going to be going inside. You want them as round as possible. Also, you want these to be as smooth. So for example, if you use pliers to push them in, sand it down. Some rods that I've tested from some shops, they are actually thicker than they should be. So yeah, this is 586, yeah, 0, 586. So should be like this. If they are too big, just sand them down. They still fit, but there's just a little bit too much friction. You can test them with the top rail parts, and they should slide in freely. Right, so next step is securing the back ring assembly. So you drill this to M2 and then take tap, 3mm tap, and just tap it to 3 mils. Right. So there are 3 holes that you do it on. Then I'm using M3 10mm. I think 15mm will work as well, and longer 2mm 20 for the top. So let's start with the top. Line the holes. Right. Where is my handy dandy screwdriver? Here we go. And then the side screws. And here we go. This part might hit the top, but don't worry, the guides are gonna kind of spread it out a little bit when it's in the launcher. So The back tube now is done, and you can set it aside. Next step is shell wedge assembly. So this is already a completed part. Kind of gonna explain how to assemble it. So you're gonna start with the 3D printed parts. You take the this clip, pre-drill it to 2 mil, and then don't pre-drill the base, screw it on using M2 bolts. So then you cut the 50 mil PVC pipe, but cut it longer than it is here. So I usually cut it to 50 mil or something like that, 50 centimeters. Then you slide it on and it should fit inside. Make sure that the cut is flat, at least on one side. Then what you do is basically you need to mark out the window. So you take the shell wedge and you see where it has this risen area. This actually pushes against the grenade and it secures the grenade in place. So what you do is, it's shown in the PDF document pretty well. You basically align it somewhere in the middle, mark the two where the risen up area is, and make sure that this clamp bit is towards the base of the wedge assembly, and then just mark out the window, take out the PVC pipe, cut it out, slide it back in. Then you can, I usually kind of just shave it off if it needs, test it. You might want to do it after as well when assembling, just to make sure it goes in well. Yeah, basically test it. You can put the grenade in and actually push it down and see if it locks it in. It should lock it in. Then what I do is use contact glue. So basically stick this part to the PVC part so it's nice and secured. Then use 4 mil tapping kit. Tap the threads into the base. There's 2 holes. What you can do next is take the trigger, push it in and see if it moves in. There's a cut area for the trigger to move in. And another thing to note is that the ends that pushes against the grenade, it has to be flush with the base, basically. So when you put in the grenade, if it's protruding, it might press in the button on the grenade and it might shoot out. So it has to be flush. Make sure it's flush. If it's not, right, so you can set this part aside. Then kind of jumped the gun and showed how this is assembled. The shell wedge itself, basically you kind of want to sand the areas of contact. It's gonna be contacting in this part with the trigger. So you place it in. As I mentioned before, it's crucial that this raised area is near the hole. Make sure it moves freely. Before that, you just need to kind of add this block onto the base. 2 mil screw, quite a long one, a bolt. You can just stick it down. It should work stuck down as well. And this bolt is not truly necessary if you stick it down, but I just put it for safety. Then use the 9mm springs. I think these gonna be 20mm, also referenced within the PDF file. And that's it. Set this aside. Right, so that's where the fun begins. Take the bigger 75mm pipe, cut it down. Then what we're gonna do is, this has already been prepared, but we're gonna slide the side rail, the front bit. So what you do is you slide it on. Also, just a quick mention, you want to take this tool, don't remember how it's called, but basically round off the edge. You can do it with a file, but this makes it easier for it to slide down onto the pipe for the 3D printed parts. So slide it on fully. There we go. You slide it on. What you then do, you can hit it with a hammer in the front, kind of push it all the way in. What you then want to do is take a 3mm drill bit, pre-drill the holes, take 4mm tapping tap, and then tap the holes, secure them in place with a bolt. I use a 4mm M4 10mm bolts. Actually, I'll move it out. And place it on its actual spot. Alright, let's align them holes. Oops. Right. Back it up a little bit. So then I take the bolts after tapping and just secure the first two. Then you take the top rail for the trigger and you align it with the rail, then push it so there's as little of a gap as possible. Pre-drill these two holes, tap them, again M4, secure the bolts, and then basically fasten them. Once you do them 2 bolts, you can do the other 4 ones. And once you've done that, take a pen and mark out the inside of the holes using a pen, or I use this correction pen. Basically, then you want to disassemble it out with the bolts. Again, try not to hit it there, you might break it along there. So just slowly, and it's off, and you'll be left with a smaller marked out hole there and the larger one here. So then cut the holes out, use a Dremel. You can modify a soldering iron with a knife to basically cut it that way, but cut this bigger one out. Test if the trigger goes in. That's why it's important that this bolt on the trigger is countersunk. Or you can just kind of cut it out a little bit to make it go past. So this fits. Then you take again the trigger wedge and using the smaller hole, align it. You see I've got it wrong way around, so this should be towards that bigger hole. Align it, mark it out, mark the lines, then align it this way, mark it out, and cut it out. You'll be left with a bigger hole, so it should fit. If it's a bit too what do you say, too tight, you don't worry, just take out a little bit, it's fine, because the shell wedge is gonna, and the trigger body, they're gonna fit inside there, so it's not crucial that they fit super well there, they just have to be running smooth. So we're gonna take our front rail, take the shell wedge and the trigger body. What you want to do is insert the trigger body into the tube, just let it be loosely. Take the shell wedge, install it as such. Now when the shell wedge is close to its final location, make sure that the trigger arm goes through the shell wedge and it should slide right on. Then the holes on the trigger wedge are gonna align with the holes on the tube. So you just want to make sure that they do. Takes longer. M4 bolts, secure it on. Wrong size. Don't need to fully screw them in, they're 20 mil long, so that's plenty. The next one. This is quite important for the next step, as we're gonna attach this. You don't want the shell wedge to move at all, because you're gonna be pushing through this pipe on the inside of the shell wedge. So your smaller PVC pipe is going to be longer. I trim it after I put this on, or just right at the end when I'm finishing the launcher. So align the holes, make sure they're aligned, push this on. Now it's going to take some force, but slide it on. Check for the holes when you're sliding, so they're gonna have to align. So push, push, push. It looks good. All right, and it's on, and all the holes are aligned. Now take your and 4 bolts. Actually, you can take these off first. Bim bada boom. Then take some M4. In this case, I'm changing. Before I used rounded ones, but now I'm gonna use these bigger flat ones to kind of go in nicely on there. Right, one in. Don't over tighten them. This is fairly weak, so don't destroy the thread. So now we have a basically half completed launcher. Right, next check that these holes are on the same plane as the shell wedge. So if you take the shell wedge, it still goes in nicely. Also make sure that this part slides onto the trigger easily. I mean, trigger tolerances are fairly different on printers, so you might get some inaccuracy. You might want to file the inside or file the trigger a little bit, just make sure it's flush. Next step, take the safety mechanism and the shell wedge, and what you do is you kind of just put it like this and put the shell wedge in. Once again, it's important that this part goes in there. Kind of just place them there, and you start sliding the top rail on. Push in the safety, it should catch. Then the next part is the trigger, and here you go. Then secure it. Before securing, actually, you can press down, check that this returns. Oh, actually, that's a mistake. You want the... Oh no, actually it's good. It's not a mistake. You're gonna need the longer bolts in the middle. Now the longer bolts. And the last two smaller ones. Now I see that the gap is a little too big, so kind of loosen these. Take a hammer. Push it in. Right, secure them back on. You can take this top one now. Tap this to M3 and the other one as well. It's gonna be this one. This might be a bit loose, so you can use some glue. So this works. Now we need to fasten in the trigger. So let's start with the trigger itself. Drill this to 4mm. Countersink that, not countersink, sorry, tap it to 4. So take a 3mm drill, go through the hole, then tap it to 4mm. Use a fairly long M4 bolt. This one is 40mm. So place the trigger in, screw the bolt, now when it's screwed in, yeah, it's in, just screw it all in, use a bolt there. Drive it back a little bit so it's not pushing through. Same idea here. And it's in. Now don't push this button. It should not, oh actually it should press. When it's pushed in, it's not gonna press when the safety is in. So that's it. Okay, next we're gonna assemble the back tube assembly into the launcher. So you take the rods, you slide them in. What you can do, if it's not fully aligned, once again release these. Play about. Oh yeah, these back two screws, they're catching on. And here we go. We're gonna have to trim these a little bit. So we are in. Now push it out a little bit. Push the ring to the end. It's catching on something. There we go. And push out a little bit more. Then you want to push it onto the pipe. Get a hammer. Make sure that it's fully in. I didn't align the holes correctly. Here we go. So now drill, once it's fully on, drill it. Check also if it goes far enough. You can take this part, put it on. Check that it goes fully in. Then drill it. So drill it 2 mil. Then tap it to 3 mil. And use 3 mil bolts to secure it. So I use fairly long ones, look like 20 mil. 3 bolts in total. One. Two. Push this out. Third one is there. Now take some longer. This is 40 mil as before, M4. Drill this part to 40. I don't think I tapped these. I think these are good as they are. Tap them if you need to. Actually, it's a better idea to assemble the side first. So take it off. We'll do that now. So the sight. Right, starting with the spring. So you're gonna get the springs that are mentioned in the PDF, and you're gonna want to bend them in this way. They are 120, but now it's like 70. So you can buy some 70 or 45 springs, the same specifications, but I just bend them. Then you're gonna put this, assemble the sight, and this square bit goes onto the main bit. Then what you want to do is drill this. So to 4 mil. So drill, drill it through. Check that these bolts, they're not as free as I'd like them to be. Yeah, that's better. So now the spring goes into the hole there and here. So you have to align it, which is always fun. So if you push the spring in here, press it in, as you see, tap these arms, screw this in. This is going to be using different bit. Yep. Now we have to align it. Also the Allen key. There we go. So it's gonna meet with the spring. You want the spring to go around there. It's the next bolt is gonna catch it better. Make sure it flips back. And now assemble it onto the sight, onto the launcher actually. So don't over tighten it. If it's sticking, you can release these bolts a little bit, not too much. Perfect. Now push this down, push it in. That's it. The trigger should not push. The safety should be engaged. For the front sights, two pieces and one bolt or two bolts. So in the back you can see there is a provision for the spring. Trim the spring, it will go in like this. So just align it, push it into, use the M4 40 mil. Once again, pre-drill this hole to 4mm drill bit. Tap the side once. screw that in, align it, that's it. It's aligned, hold on to the spring. I've done it the wrong way. Right. It goes in. Is it this way? Yes, I think it's this way. So this way. Push in the spring. Screw the bolt, and the bolt has to pass the spring loop. There we go. There we go. Right, you might need to sand the sides. You see how this part, when it's closed, it was protruding. So when you're closing the launcher, set first these sides like this, leave a gap, and then push down these sides and lock the sides in. So the sides are locked in. When you open the launcher, it will automatically open the sides, both of them. Check if it's smooth. Should be smooth. When it's fully opened, you need to check that it presses down. If not, you need to undo these screws and shorten this. Now, what we're gonna do with these two bolts. They were too long. Take it out. And let's compare with the old ones. Yeah, same. And just trim them with pliers. Might be difficult, but it's possible. You can also trim them with a file or a grinder. And then the next one. Right, check. Opens, all works. Awesome. Finish the rest of the bolts. And that's it, you're done. You might want to add some bolts on here for the slings. For the sling, for painting, I use primer. Sand it, another layer of primer, sand it, coat. Then the paint itself, few layers as well, and matte lacquer, just to extend the use. Also, there is this shell wedge. This is how you lock in the shell. It's fairly simple to use. Yeah, you load in the shell. Take the shell wedge out, load in a shell, adapter as well. Make this. Each shell is different, so you're gonna have to make an adapter. Load in the shell. Make sure it's at the bottom. Put in the shell wedge. Now if you push the launcher down, it's not gonna eject the shell. Then you need to open it, and now you can press it to shoot the shell. This shell is empty. Whoops. And that's it. Hope you enjoy it.